Everyone knows the tape don't lie. It's Marcus Johnson's job to tell us the story behind the tape with the Morning Tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920 AM.
All right, we're back here on Raider Nation Radio 920. Thank you for being with Vinny and Clay. Vince will be back next week. We're so happy to have you with us today. And don't forget, the key word of the day for your Summer of Fun giveaway, 4 nights in Key West. Text the word FISH, F-I-S-H, into 702-365-9200 for your chance at greatness here on Raider Nation Radio. Marcus Johnson brings the greatness every Wednesday at this time with Tape Don't Lie up on YouTube. Go up there to YouTube, subscribe to Tape Don't Lie. You get a bevy of information all the time, player profiles, schedule breakdowns, live shows, and so much more. He also writes with silverandblackpride.com, and he joins us here on this Wednesday. Marcus, thank you for joining us. Today's conversation, we were kind of talking about stat projections, rookie projections, at least at certain levels for the rookie class of skill players for the Raiders. And I was kind of wondering what, for you, when you start taking a look at maybe of a guy like Jack Besh, all right, when you're a second-round player, you're expected to really pop. But at the same time, how will this offense kind of like work him into the form? Because he's somebody that can do a lot of different things. But what do you think they really wanted to bring him in, and what did they have in mind at the second round for this particular receiver?
I think for Jack Besh, one thing that you're going to see a lot from him is just kind of learning to be that big slot role. I think that's kind of the role that they're going to be pushing him with, and especially, hearing all the stuff that's coming out of minicamp with, Thornton Jr. mainly playing outside with Trey Tucker. I think they're going to try to mix him into that big slot role. So with Jacoby Myers kind of playing that role at this point, I would expect his targets to kind of be on not, maybe what I expected when he got drafted, but, probably after, maybe if they don't re-sign Myers and things like that, you might see that production lift up a little bit. But, he's a guy I expect to kind of be around like the 40 catch range at this point, just because unless, there's injuries or something like that or something like that where he's able to get some more playing time. But I do, one area where I see him playing a lot, though, is just when they are wanting to run the ball and really want to run the ball against certain teams. Because one thing he does really well is he's a great blocker, right? And if they want to get some blocking and get that type of guy in there where he can get physical at the line of scrimmage with some of these safeties and corners and things like that, you want Jack Besh out there. So I think that's going to be a little bit more of his role this year. And a lot of it might have to do with him not having that contract signed yet. I'm not sure if he's got that done yet, but it might be a little bit of that situation with what's going on with him in minicamp. But I still think that when they want to run the ball against certain teams, and there's going to be certain teams that are going to want to run the ball against who are have the lighter linebackers and they're built to stop the pass, especially in the AFC. You're going to see a little bit more of him getting more snaps than I would say targets. So him playing and being physical and getting those blocks in and helping Ashton Genty get a lot of yards. I would see more of that from Jack Besh this year than I would say getting a lot of receptions and targets.
Okay. Yeah, he does come into a situation that it's a good problem to have for the Raiders. You've got good players that are ahead of him in a Jacoby Myers and some of the others, the way they're going to use other players in and around him. But what does this ultimately mean potentially for a Jacoby Myers?
That's a great question, because when you had that, his contract is almost up, right? And this is his last year of his contract. And he is an older player. I think he's getting closer to 30, right? And when you have that type of situation with him, and you bring in Jack Besh, you kind of feel like that might be what their plan is, to kind of have Jack Besh fill into that role what Myers does, because to me they're kind of similar players. Mm-hmm. From that aspect where you can move them around a lot, because you can play Jack Besh outside as well. But, Jacoby Myers can block, too. That's something that he does really well, and something that you'll see him get physical and get some pancakes in there and knock out some safety sometimes. That's something he does really well. So I think, with Myers, you kind of have a guy with Jack Besh that probably will be his replacement at some point in time. I don't know how they're going to work it out with his contract, but, we're further into, we're almost in July, and there really hasn't been a new contract with him yet. So you're kind of getting the feeling that maybe they might see him, kind of let him go and then bring in Jack Besh. And that's why they drafted some of those wide receivers, so they can have a younger core at that position. So, if Jacoby Myers has a big year, and then he ends up getting a big contract from somewhere else. I don't know if the Raiders are going to end up, giving him that contract. So I would see that Jack Best is slowly going to become his replacement. That's why I was saying I don't think there's going to be a lot of targets for Jack Best this year. More him just kind of playing in the run game and then mix it up a little bit, because Jacoby Myers is going to be playing that kind of that slot role where he's playing inside, outside, kind of that Z, that people like to talk about. From kind of old school talk with how the wide receiver positions are. So him moving around Jacoby Myers is going to keep Jack Best on the bench a little bit. But that's when you see year 2, you see Jack Best come and become that starter.
How big of a year could this be for Jacoby Myers statistically then?
Honestly, I think Jacoby Myers is going to have a big year statistically. I think just because how Geno Smith plays, right? And I think Geno Smith likes to hit a lot of those slot receivers. I mean, you can talk about what he did with JSN last year, sure, even with Tyler Lockett, right? And the connection he had with Tyler Lockett. I think Myers is going to become basically kind of like a safety for him, where he's going to be, when, he needs to get a reception, he's going to get that ball to either Bowers or Myers, because Myers has great hands too and doesn't drop a lot of passes. It's something you don't see a lot from Myers, and he can make some contested catches as well. But just kind of being that outlet for Geno Smith to kind of, if he's in trouble, he can find Jacoby Myers. If some short passes, you can get the ball to Jacoby Myers, and Jacoby Myers has some pretty good yak ability, so he can make some guys miss and make some things happen. And I think Myers is a way better fit in the slot too. I think, last year he did show he could play outside, which I think is going to be big for him if he does become a free agent and, kind of maximize his value a little bit. But I think where he is natural and what he did with when he was with the Patriots is play the slot position, where he could do a lot of those option routes and choice routes and things like that. And I think you're going to see a lot of that from Jacoby Myers this year, and Geno Smith really leaning on him in certain situations, and even like in the red zone and places like that where Myers can win outside, and a lot of those like the quick fade routes that you see in the red zone. I could see a lot of that with Myers producing and having a lot of touchdowns, and kind of producing like he did in 2023 in the touchdown area. So I do expect a big year from Jacoby Myers, and kind of the similar, with the target distribution is going to be between Myers and Bowers. I kind of could see those two guys getting the most targets.
Marcus, I've got Ashton Genty for 289 carries, 1,329 yards, 11 touchdowns, 70 targets in the pass game, 55 catches, 496 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The crazy thing is, I would not be shocked if he exceeded all of those numbers. What do you feel is possible for Ashton? And am I crazy to think that he'll achieve those numbers, and maybe even more than that?
With the rushing numbers, I'm right with you on that. I think that he's going to be like right around there. I think with the 289 carries, 300 carries, that area, I kind of feel like maybe he might get over 300, but I think 289 is a good number, because that means they're having a lot more balance on offense, and they're kind of just not being one-dimensional, and they're kind of leaning on Geno Smith in certain areas. So I do like that. The receptions, I feel like that if they're getting that high in receptions, that there's a lot of check downs and things like that. I don't know if Geno's going to check down that much, but if they get Ashton Genty in the passing game like that, where he's getting 55 catches and he has that kind of production, that's going to be the offense is going to be moving. That's what I would say when it comes to that. But I'm right with you on the rushing. I think the 1,300 yards, especially at 289 carries, because if you think about it, like I said, it's like 4.5 yards per carry. That's nothing crazy. It's not like he's having this huge year. And if he ends up having that 289 carries, and he's hitting the higher yards per carry, that's going to be like 1,600 yards and things like that. So, there's going to be a lot of wiggle room with Genty, because I do think he's going to produce no matter what. There's going to be a lot of production from him. But, it all depends on what he does with the carries. Is it going to be like 5 yards per carry, or is it going to be 4.5? And that's where you're going to see where those yards end up adding up. But I do believe I'm right with you on the rushing. I think he's going to be right in that area with the 280 to 300 carries and have about 1,300 yards. And that's kind of where I have my over-under with him, is at 1,300 yards, because I think he's going to hit that number at least. And, it's going to be around there. But, with the catches, if he ends up getting a lot of those catches like that, like I said, the offense is probably going to be moving, and it's going to be basically built around him. So we'll see how that goes with the catches. But, with the carries, I agree with that for sure.
It's fascinating. We're speaking with Marcus Johnson from Tape Don't Lie. Go up to YouTube and subscribe to TDL. Tape Don't Lie is a fascinating resource full of great insight, player profiles, and live shows. Tape Don't Lie up on YouTube. And What I've noticed, and what you've ever kind of gleaned from rookie running backs from the film, and how the attrition of the season kind of hinders what they could do in that first year, because it seems like many running backs aren't ready for that kind of action, that kind of heat, and that kind of brutality of the game. But at the same time, Ashton Genty seems to be built differently. What have you noticed in his game that makes him different and perhaps able to take on more of an NFL schedule than other running backs over the past decade?
I think how much Boise State leaned on him has him already kind of built for that long haul of the season, just because, having almost 400 carries, and you do it in like about 12 games or 13 games, that kind of is going to be the volume that he's going to get in the NFL. So I think he's ready to go in that area where he's going to be able to kind of keep it going throughout the season. And also, I think, just when they kind of give him some rest and kind of mix in some of the other running backs, I think it's going to be kind of take the heat off him a little bit so he can get used to the long season. Okay. But just how many carries he had in college really sets the tone for it. And I think with running backs, that's, when people talk about the value of a running back and all that stuff when you draft them high, running backs are the ones who usually produce year one. If we're talking about guys that are for sure things year one, you can talk about Barkley's and all these other running backs that come in and get drafted year one. They usually produce a lot. And because it's really kind of running the football is just such a natural thing for some players that it's not a crazy transition for them, like playing quarterback. You go from playing quarterback in college, go to playing quarterback in the NFL, you're seeing coverages that you've never seen before and things like that. But with a running back, outside zone is outside zone, gap is power, counter's counter. Those things don't change too much for running back. So that's why the transition is a lot easier for them, right? Because, it's still the same game. It's not really that much different. It's not what you're reading, the keys are the same, and a lot of those things don't change from one level to the next. And that's why you see, usually the guy's good in high school, he's good in college, he's probably going to be a good NFL player too, because it's just like a more natural position where you can just use your instincts and use your vision and things like that just to make plays. So, I expect Jeff to kind of actually, be a little bit better, because he's not going to have the 400 carries that he's going to get like, he had in college last year. And, have a lot of that what I would say, contact and a lot of the brutality that he took. He's able to absorb it. He's going to be ready for it. And, just the way he runs, too, I think that he is going to be ready for that long haul. But I also think the transition is going to be a lot easier for him than the other rookies have.
Another advantage that I think he has is kind of gets a little underscored was the offensive coordinator that he had at Boise State, Dirk Koetter, the former NFL head coach, really an offensive guru. Chip Kelly pointed this out when we talked to him about Ashton Genty over in minicamp. The value of him working for the last 3 years with Dirk Koetter, especially these last 2 years with Dirk Koetter, who's now retired. He felt Ashton's gone. I'm walking off into the sunset. But how much of a benefit can that be, playing in that offense and transitioning to the NFL now?
It's going to be a big benefit, especially in the passing game. I think where it's going to be a benefit for him is the passing game, because he's going to have an idea of what NFL teams like to do in the passing game really early on, especially from a blocking perspective too. I think it's going to help him become be able to block a lot better than some of these other teams that come from a lot of these spread offenses where they're not asked to block as much, or they don't have the same reads that they do in the NFL. And, the way that Boise State worked in the passing game is a lot of NFL concepts. So he has an idea of what a choice route is out of the backfield, especially with Dirk Koetter and working with Dirk Koetter, and when to hit the flat, when to run certain routes, the wheels and things like that. They run with a lot of running backs. He could have a good idea of what they'd like to do from a pro concept perspective, which is another reason his transition is going to be a lot easier just in the passing game, just because he has that. He's working with Dirk Koetter, and usually, Chip Kelly too. Chip Kelly has used a lot of pro concepts his last time when he went back to college football. So it's not going to be anything new. It's just going to be different language for Ashton Genty to remember. It's not going to be something where he's going from this crazy spread offense like he's coming from Tennessee or something like that. It's going to be easier for him to absorb it and able to get in the passing game, able to know where to block and a lot of those things really early on, because even, when we talk about protection, the protections are different in college, right? And you go to the NFL, I mean, you can see some different protections from the NFL style, but he's going to be used to that because he worked with Dirk Koetter. He's going to know where to go and where his reads are when he's, in pass protection and helping out in the block against blitzes and things like that. And I think that's where Dirk Koetter is really going to come in, is just understanding the passing in the NFL and what you have to do and understanding the concepts and the protections.
And follow Marcus on X at @TheMarkJohnNFL here on Raider Nation Radio, the morning tailgate on Wednesdays at this time. Let's go into this. Just two guys that have my interest, because I'd like to see how they pan out, because there's not a clear route for them, and that's Cam Miller and Tommy Malot. All right, how do you find their skill set, and what kind of stood out to you when you watched some of their tape out of college?
I'll start with Tommy Malot. I think with Malot, it's going to be interesting to see where they use him. I haven't heard too much about him out of minicamp, but I always felt like when you watch him, and I know he wants to be a slot receiver, but I always felt like he would be a better running back.
Okay.
So I'm interested to see how they use him, because I think he has a lot of natural instincts at the running back position, and when he has the ball in his hands and how he can make guys miss, and I think it'd just be easier transition for him, in my opinion, for him to go to running back instead of being a wide receiver. And that's up to him, what he really wants to do or how the Raiders want to use him. But I think with Wildcat and those type of formations, I think you could use him a lot early on in those, because he does have that threat of throwing the ball with it too, and so you can get really creative with him.
Right, yeah.
But the main thing with that is that if he gets to Wildcat, he can run the ball. I mean, that's the biggest thing I like with Tommy Malot. You see a lot of his biggest highlights are from his long runs and things like that. It's not really from him, passing the football. But he does just a great job of at that mesh point and reading it and knowing when to keep it, knowing to give it. So I think that's where he can kind of get into the game. But it'll be interesting to see what he does in the NFL. And I think with Cam Miller, I think with him, what he needs to do is kind of just get in there and just show how smart he is and his understanding of NFL concepts and what he can do there, because he's always going to have a little bit of that arm limitation to him. But he's a really smart quarterback, and he knows where to go with the football, and he understands what NFL teams like from the quarterback. And I just love his poise too. I love his poise in the pocket. He never gets rattled. And I know he had a great offensive line in North Dakota State, and so he barely got touched. But he does have a lot of poise, and it's just if there's pressure, it doesn't bother him that much, and that's a really big transition thing for me with quarterbacks, is that pocket presence. So he has that, and he has that ability to him. He's always got the arm limitation, but I think he's got to keep working and show that he can understand what the NFL teams want him to do, and when he gets his chance, kind of show off that pocket presence. And then he has some good legs to him as well, so he could be a good fit. If some quarterbacks go down, I think Chip Kelly would know what to do with them.
Last one for me, Marcus, and we're talking to Marcus Johnson from Tape Don't Lie. When you look, Pete Carroll made it pretty clear at the end of minicamp that he's not interested in incremental improvement or marginal improvement. He wants to push this thing as far as he can. It leads you to believe that he's in win now mode. We'll see how many wins that actually adds up to. But when you look at this roster, do you see the makings of a win now roster?
On offense, I do. On offense, I see the makings of a win now roster. I think going to get Geno Smith, and then adding Ashton Genty, and then having a lot of wide receiver group that they have, which, even when I watched, the wide receivers last year, and when I'm going back to the tape this year, you saw a lot of, them just not having the quarterbacks to really get these guys the ball where they really needed to get the ball to. And I think Geno Smith's going to change a lot of that. And then when you add in the run game, and then with Chip Kelly and, the creativity that he's going to show, and, I think preseason is going to look really vanilla, and then week one is going to look crazy, and he's going to be doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff. And I think that's what the excitement is, and they're going to have to lead this team into win now mode. And I think that's why they have that feeling. And I think on defense, they're kind of just going to be kind of just holding on, I think, a little bit. There's going to be some games where they don't look good at all, and there's going to be some games where they look really good. So I think the defense kind of is going to keep them from maybe becoming a true contender, but I think the offense is going to lead this team to where, that's why Pete Carroll has that idea of them being in win now mode, because the offense is going to be able to lead this team. I think it's going to be where, they're putting up points in games where, they're just kind of dominating teams both through the pass and the run. And it's, like I said, I think Chip Kelly's going to catch a lot of teams off guard. Teams really don't know what Chip's going to do, and I think that's early on in the season, you're going to see this offense be really explosive, where people are writing think pieces about Chip Kelly and all the things that he's doing. So I think his offense puts them in win now mode, and then the defense is going to have to start catching up. And I think the next couple of years, you're going to see the defense get better once they add some more young guys. Get some younger talent at the linebacker position, defensive tackle, things like that, and they start building the defense up a little bit more. But the offense, I feel like, is ready to go. I feel like they are going to be able to put up some points and get some explosive plays and be exciting for Raiders fans.
Marcus, we'd be remiss if we did not ask you about some interesting news that happened in and around the league, especially in the NBA and the association with your Phoenix Suns. All right, they're making a huge trade, and they found a home for Kevin Durant. What do you think about this trade in the afterglow?
I think with Kevin Durant, sometimes when I watch him, I feel like he still thinks he's the man sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Devin Booker was always the man, and I think that has a little bit of that kind of where Durant wants to take the shot, should Booker take the shot, and then Bradley Beal, he didn't really know what to do with that at all. So I think when you bring in some of these other players, and I think the Suns got to kind of build around Devin Booker a lot more, I think you just got to ride with Book and what he does best, and we just let him kind of take over the game and let him score the points and let him do what he does. And I think when you get rid of Kevin Durant, I think Bradley Beal is probably going to play a little bit better because he's going to have a better role of being a pure scorer. So I don't know how the Suns are going to look next year. I was really disappointed with the whole Kevin Durant situation because, I was super excited at that time. I thought the Suns were going to be, contending and doing all these crazy things and even make the playoffs, right? But, Jalen Green's a decent player, it's not going to be exactly the same, but I still think when you have Devin Booker and, I think Chris Paul really taught him how to be a leader, I think that's going to show up a lot more. It's him having that leadership role and becoming that one of the best players in the NBA and kind of taking that step. So it's going to be more on what Devin Booker does with this because, I think the team around him, it's not, like I said, it's not the greatest team in the world, but it's enough where they could become a playoff team.
We're getting some thoughts on the text line. They watch you on X at @TheMarkJohnNFL. They know you went to Oracle Park. A lot of fans in the Bay Area want to know, what was your thought of your first Giants home game?
Well, it's super interesting because I'm from Arizona, right? So I go to Diamondbacks games, and Diamondbacks games are kind of like just very tame,
yes,
right? And so I'm at Giant Stadium, and I felt like I was at a football game. It was just the atmosphere, the way the fans were into it, and like the cheering, and just the understanding every single player and things like that. I go to Diamondbacks game, it's just kind of everybody's just kind of sitting around and just really not doing anything. And then and I go over there and to a Giants game. My family's from Baltimore, so I've been to Cannon Yards and things like that. So it kind of gave me that feel of being like at Cannon Yards, and this is a beautiful stadium too. It was just the way it's set up, the beauty of it, the food there. So I really had a great time at that game, and the Giants ended up winning, and I got to see a lot of home runs, and the ball almost hit me a couple times because I was sitting there right in the home run area. But yeah, it was great. It was exciting, and just the atmosphere was crazy to me because it really felt like I was at a football game.
Well, now that you've done that, what you have to do is, I don't know if you've done this before, and you're from Arizona, so it's just right up the road. Is go see a Giants game in Scottsdale during spring training. Go see a Giants game in spring training. I tell everybody, if you want a great experience for a spring training experience, go check out the Giants in Scottsdale. It's a great scene, really festive and fun, and it's a great time of year.
Yeah, I'll definitely end up doing that after going to that game. That was exciting. Just being in the atmosphere is crazy. It was totally different for me.
That's awesome having you on, Marcus. Thank you again for making time with us. Let's do it again next week.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.